we're going to be learning with Emily about kids metrics, something you've probably never thought about before. Certainly in our first 5-minute conversation, I felt just inspired and eager, and I'm so excited to learn with you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Emily, and I'm here to talk to you about responsible, sustainable growth measurement for young people. A few caveats before we begin. First, I only speak for myself, not for any previous or current employers. Second, I don't think your growth metrics are bad. I'm not here to yuck your yum. I just want to let you know that if you want to grow with youth, you have to do it in ways that are sustainable for the business and user well-being. And a lot of ways that we think about growth currently are not sustainable in the context of a youth population. So I just want to talk to you about how to do this right in a healthy way so we can really grow with the next generation. All I'm sharing here are ideas and provocations. I am not an expert. I am a qualitative researcher talking to you about metrics. These are not the answers. I don't have the answers, but as a Libra and a middle child, I have a lot of feelings. So I'm going to share those with you, and I hope they just act as thought starters or provocations for you. And then finally, if you couldn't tell by the side part and the French tuck and the skinny jeans, I'm a millennial, so I love GIFs, and you will see a lot of those, and I pronounce it GIFs. So first things first, you might be thinking, Emily, I don't need to listen to you talk about growth. We have a Gen Z researcher. And to that I say, wonderful. But did you know Gen Z is almost Gen Pop? Gen Z are turning 17 this year. Your teen users are Gen Alpha, who are turning 16 this year. I had my third baby last year. She's Gen Beta, all right? This is baby Phoebe, and she is your future, so please think about her. But in a more concrete, business-focused sense, here's why you need to consider youth. Number one, there are a lot of them. They make up about 16% of the world's population, and they are most likely to be online and have high digital adoption rates. Number two, they're building their lifetime habits right now. So winning them when they're young can pay dividends for years to come. Switching costs are incredibly high once you find something that works for you. Think of all of us who can't let go of Facebook and still call it Facebook. All of you who never got off of Twitter and can't make Blue Sky or Threads work for yourself. All of you who grew up in an Apple household and refuse to try Android. It is hard to switch once you find something you know and love. So please serve your young people now, and you will have, lots of users for years to come. And finally, youth really have an outsized influence on what becomes mainstream. So understanding them now, building for them, seeing what works for them, can actually pay off with growth of other segments in the future. A lot of the things that we all use, like short-form content and ephemeral video, started as teen trends. So I really want you to think about building for youth, thinking about youth. We really can't just growth hack with young people. That's not sustainable or responsible. I don't need you to build entirely different product experiences for them, but it's really important that you think about measuring success differently for them. If you use the same metrics with young people that you do with your general population, you might think that those young people are failing, that they're not valuable to your business. But I promise if you reframe some of your metric, you will see growth with young people and responsible growth at that. So I've shared with you why you need to care about youth, but you might be wondering, Emily, why do you care so much about this? Why is a qualitative researcher talking to me about metrics? So I want to share my villain origin story with you. I started my career at Nickelodeon in television research with a little gal named Dora the Explorer. And then I jumped over to Nick Digital. But always at Nickelodeon, everything we did was in service of kids. They were core to the bottom line of our business. And then I joined Big Tech. I came out and joined a FANG company to help them launch their first under 13 product. It was a communication app, a messenger app for kids, if you will. And we had brilliant cross-functional partners, engineering, data science, PM. Everyone was so ready to take on this challenge, but they had one problem, and it's that they couldn't hear me at all. I didn't know if I had lost my voice in the move from New York to California, or if they were all dog fooding some super top secret noise canceling headphones, but everything I said went in one ear and out the other. For example, in every brainstorm, someone said, let's build streaks. You know, streaks where you kind of gamify getting people to come to the app every day. You millennials might remember Snapchat or Duolingo. They do this a lot. And every time this came up, I had a visceral reaction. I said, no, don't do that. That's not good. But no one listened. Then my manager pulled me aside and she said, Emily, you can't just tell them what to do. You have to tell them why. I said, oh, okay, I can do that. So I go into the next meeting, I'm ready, and someone says, streaks. And I say, no, you can't do that. For the good of the children. This still didn't land. Finally, my manager said to me, Emily, you're speaking different languages. This is a translation problem. I thought that I was incentivized to build good things for the next generation and to really do right for the children, which I realize is a naive take given that I work in corporate America, but it is still a fight I fight. And my cross-functional partners were actually driven by metrics. One of our core metrics was daily active users. Where did my thing go? Okay, there we go. One of our core metrics was daily active users. So in order to look successful on paper, we had to get kids to this app every day. And that is why they kept suggesting streaks. DAO is a fine metric for a lot of people, but I don't think it's the best for a youth-focused experience. One of the reasons this is because kids don't often have unfettered access to their devices. Device time is often mediated by the adults in their lives. A kid might only get a device on the weekends or for 30 minutes after homework. They might not choose to use your product during that time. This product was focused on under 13s, but the same goes for teenagers. I remember as a teenager, my phone went with my parents at 8 o'clock at night. I was grounded all the time as a teenager. I did not always have access to my device. So the fact that kids aren't always in control of their devices and they will fail to maintain streaks has a few downstream effects. One being an impact on the well-being of your users, of your children. It's going to reduce their feelings of empowerment if they feel like every time they open the app, they have failed to do something because they couldn't get there every day. It might also fuel an unhealthy obsession to kind of check in or try to be on the app all the time. Both of these are incredibly frustrating experiences for users. So that increased frustration might cause users to churn. Another effect is the parent perception. If you think of the headlines, it looks like we're incentivizing kids to spend more time on devices, which, like, let's be honest, we probably were. If a parent sees that, again, the parent who is the gatekeeper of device time for young people, their perception of your product tanks, and they no longer let their child use it. So again, you've lost users. And then finally, just because they don't have full control of their devices, we will not meet a DAO success criteria. It will look like we failed on paper. And if it looks like you fail on your goals, you're not going to keep pouring resources or effort into an experience for kids. So overall, this is just not a sustainable growth strategy. So now I knew the disconnect. I knew why my team was suggesting streaks all the time, but I didn't know what to do about it. As long as DAO was our top line metric, I felt stuck in kind of an endless loop that looked like this. Someone sets the goals, daily active users. We build features to support those goals, in this case, streaks. And then someone like me gets mad. And this was a really vicious cycle for myself until I realized we build for what we measure. We were measuring daily active users, so we built features to support that. Why not just measure something else? I thought my product influence started at the bottom in building goals and ideating features and things like that, when really my product influence needs to start up here. All of us as researchers know our users. We know their constraints. We know their needs. We need to be part of the goal setting for our product to really get into those metrics conversations so we are user-focused from the jump. Why I thought it was like Mark Zuckerberg locked away somewhere making these metrics and these success criteria, I don't know. But it was a really nice PM named Lexi and a data scientist named Ellie. And I went to them with my concerns, both the business concerns and the user concerns, and we adjusted our top line metric to weekly active users. And then no one ever suggested streaks again. That was a big win, and it was that easy. Let me give you another example. One of our other top line metrics was a metric of engagement, right? How many messages were sent, how many calls were made. fairly standard, fairly typical, and we saw kids calling people a lot. If someone didn't answer, the kid would just smash the redial button constantly, constantly, constantly. Or they'd send 100 poop emojis in a row. On paper, this looked wonderful, right? Like, this is engagement, we're doing so well. But in actuality, it was a terrible, terrible user experience. The people who were receiving endless messages and calls felt spammed, and they actually deleted the experience. They didn't want to be there, they were being spammed constantly. The kids who were calling someone and weren't getting an answer also felt crappy because their friend wasn't responding to them, so they also churned. So this was a really negative user experience on all sides, even though on paper, it looked like we were exceeding and doing really, really well. So we had to rethink, what is our actual user goal here, and how can we operationalize that? What would a good experience look like that would cause our users not to churn? So we really stepped back and said, what do we want kids to get from this? And we wanted them to be able to maintain relationships when they're apart and to strengthen relationships. And we know this doesn't happen through, 100 spam emojis. We know that this happens through actual conversation. So, click, click, we created a new successful engagement metric. And we thought about what is a conversation, what does connection truly look like? And we thought it was maybe 3 conversational volleys in a contained period of time. Person A, person B, and person A again. And because that was our new goal and that was our new metric, since we build for what we measure, we could now build features that supported this, which better supports youth well-being. So we built a voicemail feature. Early on, if a call didn't connect, there was only a juicy redial button right in the middle. We removed that button, and now there's a voicemail feature, so that if a kid calls someone and they don't answer, the kids can still feel connected. They can let their friend know they're thinking about them with a voicemail. We also built support for ongoing conversation. Kids are pretty terrible conversationalists. They really don't know how to make small talk, so it was hard kind of going back and forth. So we built emojis or frames that might have prompts like, hey, what was your favorite thing about school today? To really help them engage in that conversation. And then my favorite piece, we actually had a little pledge in onboarding that kind of went over the community standards, kind of ways to behave on platform. And we added an item here that said, if someone doesn't answer right away, they might just be busy. It's not a reflection of you. They'll call you back in a little bit, just to kind of set the norm that that's what was expected. All right. I want to do a little shout out, a little brainstorming all together. I recently went to an improv show, so get ready. I want to talk about outbound clicks or shopping. I know that platforms need to make money, they need to monetize, and advertising helps. So outbound clicks on ads or direct purchases look really great for us. But I've seen with teens that they actually fail on this metric a lot. And then they don't look successful. It doesn't look like teens are a good audience for you. You say, oh, we failed with them. Let's deprioritize their experience. We'll get back to them when they're 18. But if you deprioritize them now because they're not successful on this metric, what makes you think they're going to come back and give you a second chance when they turn 18 and might be more valuable to you? So I'd love to hear anybody shout out, why do you think teens fail on outbound clicks or direct purchases? Okay, I can't actually hear anything, so I'll tell you, they don't have money. I think I saw that. If they do have money, they might not have a credit card. They might need parent permission for purchases. Maybe they buy something once, but they don't have boatloads of money to be doing this frequently. So they're gonna look like failure for you. They're gonna churn out because you deprioritize them. Why would they come back later? So we could rethink, how else can we show the value of teens to your advertisers? Show that teens are important to the growth of the business now and later. I'm not going to shout it out again because I don't know if we have time. But maybe you look at something like the amount that teens are saving for later or sending to their parents who do have money and purchasing power. There are other behaviors that you can explore to show teens value in a shopping journey, to show your advertisers that your platform works, to show growth of the business. And then again, if you adjust this metric, you will build for what you measure. So you might actually build a better experience for teens, something like wish list, or a feature that shares something directly to a parent with a credit card. There are downstream implications of the things that you measure that can be better for the user experience overall. All right, you might also be thinking, Emily, we don't have a good way to operationalize this in business. Oh, I got some red lights here, okay. And you might say, we use a CSAT survey or customer satisfaction to see how our users are liking this, make sure it's working for them and that we've got sustainable growth. And to that I say, wonderful, but have you ever watched a child take a CSAT survey? Because I have, and it's brutal. This is a typical CSAT question. It makes sense. How satisfied are you? There's a 5-point scale with a few text anchors there. I put this in front of children. 2 big issues arose. They have no idea what satisfied means. One said, does it mean cool? Does it mean I'm jealous? A lot of them said to me, playing with slime is satisfying, so like slime? No. The other is the scale. It looks totally normal to us, but to a lot of younger people, number 1 is the best. This scale didn't work. They also tend to ignore text wherever they can. So this whole thing was a mess. We revised it with kid input to how happy were you with how blank answered that question with kind of a visual scale. We actually saw a 50% increased response rate just because of increased comprehension. So again, you need to be thinking about kids as you're thinking about your metrics because they do have unique needs. This is still not perfect. If a kid asks, hey, what's the weather today? And the voice assistant says, it's rainy. One kid might give that a 5 because it was a clear answer. One kid might give that a 1 because it means they don't get to play soccer today. One might give it a 3 because they only have 1 sock on and they had Fruit Loops for breakfast. Kids are wild, okay? I think we can still better align our metrics of success to the questions we use and the user intent. So if a kid says, hey, voice assistant, tell me a joke, their goal is to laugh. So your success measure could be, how funny did you think that joke was? If a kid says, hey, voice assistant, why is the sky blue? Their user goal is a clear and understandable answer. So that can kind of be your question. We just need to rethink how we measure success with young people. The bottom line here is that you're all researchers and part of the user experience team. You're advocating for your users, and we can't just do that through design, but we need to influence the product from the jump, and that means being part of those metrics conversation, because again, you build for what you measure. So I'm asking all of you to connect to your PM and data science partners, figure out if your current success metrics work for young people, if maybe they need some tweaking, if they are unhealthy for young people or don't support their well-being, I beg you to adjust that with this simple framework. Click. All right, review your current metrics for young people's well-being. There is a framework I like called the Responsible Innovation and Technology for Children framework that can walk you through some of this. Look at your metrics, just compare it against that framework for youth well-being and adjust any that might actually be detrimental to young people. Again, thinking about DAO, that leads to detrimental product experiences for young people, so adjust your metrics accordingly. Think about the user goal when you're just adjusting your metrics, not just the business goal, and then see if you can operationalize that goal into a dashboard, something that's better suited for teens, kids, the next generation. I don't pretend to have all of the answers. This is iterative. I don't pretend to know everything. I really just wanted to get you thinking. So please, if you have a better way to show how doing right for youth is also doing good for business, please share it with me. Message me on LinkedIn. Come back next year and present. I'm here to grow. I'm here to learn. But most importantly, I'm here for the good of the children. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we are only going to have time for 1 or 2 questions. So if we could get some hands up, and I'll throw a question out while a runner gets a mic to you. So I think one of the things that you might receive pushback on is we just want one metric for everything. We want to go after this thing, and then I can compare my teams, their efficacy. So how do you push for different metrics among different populations?
Yeah, it's not that we're going to make a metric for every single population, and it's that youth are in a very specific and unique life stage. And again, they're building habits now that last forever. So I think if we are going to push for a different set of metrics, even just a slightly tweaked one, it needs to be for youth, because everyone wants youth growth, except for those of you in enterprise. But it's incredibly critical because their online landscape looks so different from ours, even from Gen Zs. They're growing up in a world where AI is the norm. So we do need to think about how that's going to change their long-term behavior. So I think just really push to think about youth differently, because Gen Z is they're on their way out from being youth.
I love it. And do we have one question from the audience?
Make it a soft one.
Hi, my name's Corey. I have a friend who works at a startup where the founder makes the metrics. So I'm kind of curious, what if you don't have a data scientist or a product manager and you have to talk to the founder and kind of realign that?
Okay, I didn't quite hear that because there's a little bit of echo.
I did not quite hear that either. Would you mind saying that one more time?
What if it's not a data scientist or a product manager, it's the founder who's determining the metrics?
Oh, so it's somebody who's not in DS or PM.
Yeah.
Even better, I think if you know your users, you can think about what is their goal. Do a little research. Say, here's our product. How do you hope to use this? What are your goals for this? And then see if you can operationalize that. I know on a voice assistant, we actually talked with kids about, what do you actually use this for? What do you want to get out of this? And they said, I want to go down a rabbit hole on all these fun facts. So curiosity was really their user goal. How can you operationalize? So I think starting with the user need and figuring out how to operationalize that is a great way to start.
Love it. And we'll take one right here.
Hi. Sorry about that. Hi, my name is Arev. I'm a UX researcher at Xometry. My question for you is, so one of the things that you said was one of the biggest influencing points that we can have is at the goal setting process. And that really resonated with me. And my question for you is, how do you manage a situation where you maybe have different sets of users and your goals for those users might actually be in competition with each other? And how do you manage a situation like that?
That's a great question. I think if you have goals that are in competition, then you need to actually think about, okay, who is our core user? Who is our main audience? What is our best growth vector here? And prioritize that. I personally choose to prioritize youth because they are the next ones coming on board. But that's where I think you would do what we saw in the market research presentations this morning of talking to your market research team or your data science team and saying, can we size these opportunities to see which is our best opportunity for growth and then maybe prioritize that.
Love it. Okay.
Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you so much, Emily.